This early morning, let us savor an excerpt from Bhikkhu Bodhi's and the Buddha's words, and then let's meditate. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is brought to you by the kind folks who help support this channel on Patreon. This early morning, we could chant and meditate and enjoy a lesson or two. But first, if you love Star Wars and you wish to meditate as transformatively as General Leia Organa learned to do upon Ajahn Kloss under the guidance of Luke Skywalker, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Good news. If at any point during this early morning's live stream you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation or Buddhist philosophy or how to apply them to your life, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen. Let's chant. In an ongoing series of lectures I began giving at Bodhi Monastery in New Jersey in January 2003, I devised a scheme of my own to organize the contents of the Majjhima Nikaya. This scheme unfolds the Buddha's message progressively, from the simple to the difficult, from the elementary to the profound. Upon reflection, I say that the scheme could be applied not only to the Majjhima Nikaya collection of middle-length discourses, but to the four Nikaya collections as a whole. This present book organizes suttas selected from all four Nikaya collections within this thematic and progressive framework. So real quick edit. Just will take but a moment. Let's hit home and copy and backspace and reveal. And let's hit add to dictionary. Excellent. Fabulous. Thank you for your patience. Sometimes with a brainstorm, you got to strike while the iron is hot. We turn now to the latest iteration of my practice text, or sadhana, titled Secular Contemplation, Mindfulness, and Meditation, because there is no prayers, there's no faith, there is no mantras in this. It's just anybody can do this with command of the English language. This is based upon the teachings adapted from the Anapanasati Sutta. So the Anapanasati Sutta blends mindfulness, meditation, and contemplation with the four bases of mindfulness, which typically are organized, which are often organized in the following sequence: circumstances, the circumstantial, the physical, the interpersonal, and the mental. Now, over the centuries, this got shuffled a bit. I restored what I feel is the more authentic, well, I don't have a time machine, but I can observe what seems to work best in my body and mind, and what seems to work best in the body and minds of those I teach according to what they report back to me. So when teaching, my first priority is not orthodoxy, it's pragmatism. What works? Buddha said enlightenment doesn't take 3 aeons. It can be accomplished anywhere between 7 years and even 7 days. And so I try to make things just as easy as possible. Now, if you don't like that, if you like things difficult and you like orthodoxy, you'll probably be happier with a different teacher. Having said that, let's plunge right in. Begin with the Dhamma Sati, or awareness of our circumstance, but more practically, this can be described as Anicca Vipassanas, contemplations, or I got ahead of myself, set of 4 impermanence contemplations to help us sustainably let go. This is ideal when you're feeling strong, physical experiences or mental experiences that are really stealing your peace. These 4 contemplations are like apples of gold. They really are wonderful. Excuse me. At the very top of the screen, there are instructions that they belong to a unique set of instructions. Instructions predicated on a gradual approach. My intention this morning, health permitting, is to teach you the Buddha's full set of exercises that directly create, according to the Buddha, true knowledge, liberation, and indirectly create loving kindness, which is wonderful. This is a complete path. But for a lot of people, meditating for an hour is something they're not physically up to, and that's just fine. I completely get that. So I recommend an incremental approach, starting with about 3.5 minutes every 12 hours. You do that, and you can do that quite simply by playing with this exercise that I'm going to explain in a moment. Play with this for about 32 rounds, and I'll explain how to count 32 rounds in a moment as well. It should take you a total of about 3.5 minutes. Do this once every 12 hours. After a week, you may feel you're ready for a greater challenge. And then on the next week, you can add a second exercise. And so every week you can add an additional 3.5 minutes until by the conclusion of 16 weeks, you have finally, as to borrow a phrase from mass transit, reached cruising altitude. And then you can start training yourself to prepare for a 1-week retreat, which you can do at home. You don't have to go someplace fancy. Most people have, I can't say most people. Those who are fortunate can wrangle 1 paid vacation annually. And so if you can do it, take it at home, do a 1-week retreat. I'm getting way ahead of myself. First things first, just get comfortable with this one exercise, practice 32 times every 12 hours. So let's get straight to it. We come to the first, by the way, so 16 exercises can feel overwhelming to any entity with only 5 digits per appendage. Therefore, I'd like to think of these exercises in terms of 1 set of 4 contemplations and 3 sets of 4 meditations each. That seems much more bite-size. Kind of like, dividing your whole day's calories into 3 meals and 3 snacks, as opposed to 1 giganimous meal. So we begin we come to the first of four contemplations where we consider course and permanence. Now, this is not belief-oriented. Belief won't work. It seems like it will. It's a slick salesman that sells you a false bill of goods. Why? Why won't belief work? Because belief is an energy-intensive contrivance of intellect and emotion. What's wrong with that? Once your exhaustion falls below a certain level, any belief will crumble. Perhaps that is why the great football coach Vince Lombardi is famous for saying that fatigue makes cowards of us all. So we need a mechanism that is not fatigue, that is not subject to the whimsies of, or the vicissitudes of fatigue. We rely upon literally the lowest part of our central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, which is focused in the spinal cord itself. As long as you're alive, your spinal cord is intact, you can practice this. Now, can people with spinal cord injuries practice this? Yes, my understanding is that due to neuroplasticity, there is adaptation. I'm not an expert, but I'm clearly happy to work with someone in that circumstance who wants my help. But as long as we have a central nervous system, we can practice these techniques, regardless of how fatigued we are. Excuse my yawning. Regardless of how, I yawned away my next word, so let's continue. We can look at this in terms of mind, breathing, mind, lung, and body. So let's do that. Let's sit in a manner that emulates this photograph of a Buddhist statue. Notice the legs are stacked. We are open, not from the knees, but from the hips. Our hands are folded in our lap. And we generate a traction between our pelvis and our head. That's right, as if pulling our head out of the warm, dark place we sometimes seem to keep it. Now let's talk about breathing. Well, we want our in-breath to be shorter and sharper. We want our out-breath to be longer and softer. This has been my experience in over 30 years of living as if on retreat. So we're going to play with a series of 4 rhetorical questions. By definition, what that means is the purpose of these questions is not for us to arrive at the answer. Number 2, the purpose of this question is not for us to mysteriously receive an answer. However, if we persist in silently and mentally reciting this question, in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation and our relaxation, we will make progress on the path. The question is a simple question. What is changing? Change infers the futility of grasping. Impermanence requires no great intellect. It requires no mastery of any philosophical treatise. We've all seen change. With the coming and the going of the seasons, we see the impermanence of a year. With the waxing and the waning of the moon, we see the impermanence of a month. With the rising and the setting of the sun, we see the impermanence of a day. And right now, we can gingerly rest our fingertips upon our upper chest. We can feel it swell. We can feel it sink. And feel the impermanence of a moment. Ever-changing, one and all, there is nothing permanent to grasp. Once again, this is not an issue of belief, but an issue of experience. It looks like there may be a loud noise. It looks like the city's come to trim the trees on the block, so this could be an adventure. Okay, so I promised, I threatened I would teach you how to count 32 rounds, and I'll do that right now. When I was in, what was it? High school? I was, I was a junior high school. One of the two. I was taught how to work out with weights. And I was first introduced to the concept of repetitions and sets. Years later, I started studying meditation, and the word repetition was replaced with rounds and sets. So what is a round? A round consists in this system of one inhalation followed by one exhalation. So I'm going to, real quick like a bunny, I'm going to switch to the jumbo can. On our left hand, in addition to 4 fingers, each finger has 3 sets of creases and a tip. Therefore, on our left hand, we can count to 16. During each in-breath, we can advance our thumb. And over the course of 16 breaths, without forcing them, we could count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Now that's great, but it's not 32, but it's half of 32. So if 2 sets of 16 gives us 32, how do we keep track of sets? Glad you asked. On our right hand, we can keep track of our first set on the lower set of creases on our right little finger. And then on the second set of 16 rounds, we keep track of that simply by advancing the tip of the right thumb. We can do that for the first exercise, the second contemplation, the third contemplation, and the fourth contemplation. I feel that works out swimmingly. Now, this might seem weird and clunky and ungainly, and that's just fine. You are allowed to have a learning curve. Play with this once every 12 hours, and after a week or so, it'll feel like old hat, which is pretty cool. Oh, excuse me. All right, so let's go back to button 9. So now you know how to count 2 sets of 16 rounds. You're good to go. Of course, what is also fun to do, for me, whenever I work with green lettering, what I like to do is touch the tip. Take these 2 hands, and I touch the tip of my right ring finger to the great knuckle at the base of my left ring finger. And that really helps. We come to the second of four contemplations, where we consider subtle impermanence with the rhetorical question, what is fading? We begin counting sets on our right ring finger. We now come to our third of four contemplations, where we consider very subtle impermanence by playing with the rhetorical question, what is ceasing? And since this is the third of four contemplations, we're going to count sets upon our right middle finger. We come to the fourth of four contemplations where we consider relinquishing, yielding, or surrendering. As silently and mentally we recite the rhetorical question, what's releasing? We continue with Kaya Sati's only set of four preliminary meditations to center on our bodies. We begin with the first of centering's four physical preliminary practices. During the inhalation, we silently and mentally recite the verb calm. During the exhalation, we silently and mentally recite the phrase breathing long. This reminds us that when our exhalation is longer than our inhalation, it has a calming effect. Now, during the entirety of this four exercise set, we're dealing with gold, and therefore I like to count using my bottom hand's little finger, and I like to press it against the top hand's great knuckle at the base of the top hand's little finger. Since this is our first exercise, we can begin counting on our right little finger. Every time we exhale, we are wired to effortlessly access our parasympathetic nervous system, which is already which is evolved for both physical relaxation and mental release. We come now to the second of centerings for physical preliminary practices. Therefore, we begin counting sets upon our right ring finger. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the adjective short. As we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the three-syllable verb energize. This reminds us that short inhalations can be energizing. We do not live in a vacuum. There's going to be ambient sights and sounds all the time. And if you like practicing outside, there's going to be sensations depending upon the weather. Our job is not to ignore it. Our job is to let it pass right through us, like bullets through Ghost. we come to our first bliss. We come to our first of several bliss exercises. In Buddhism, bliss is any sensation that is not painful. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the sensory verb feel. As we breathe out, we silently and mentally recite the object phrase, this body. Now, fortunately, I don't know the word I'm looking for. Perception is effortless. You don't have to force it. And here's the trick. Every inhalation is already wired to access our sympathetic nervous system, which is associated with the thoracic region of our spinal cord, and has evolved not to concentrate, but to perceive, to notice, to be mindful in a manner that is vulnerable, passive, visceral, and random, because it's a survival function. Think back to our ancestors upon the plains of the Serengeti. If we were concentrating upon the splendor of a ladybug on a blade of grass in the early morning sunlight, we would be oblivious to the sound of a predator sneaking up behind us, and we would become that predator's breakfast. However, since we evolved that our mindfulness be vulnerable, passive, visceral, and random, we notice everything. Now that might not look dignified. It might make us look as twitchy as Deputy Barney Five on the reruns of the Andrew Griffith Show. But it kept our ancestors alive, and it serves us now. With each inhalation, we are wired to notice sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like. We are wired to perceive emotion, intention, thought, memory, and imagination. We are wired to experience the external and the internal, the physical and the mental, the pleasurable and the painful. We're wired to notice the interesting and the boring, the glorious and the grotesque. Now, because this is the third of centering's 4 physical preliminary practices, we're going to count our 2 sets upon the 2 sets of lower creases of our right middle finger. Coming to the fourth of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practices, we prepare to keep track of our 2 sets upon our right index finger. During our in-breath, we silently and mentally recite the word form, which functions as a monosyllabic synonym for body. As we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the 3-syllable verb relaxing. Now here's the cool thing. We don't have to force relaxation. Every time we exhale, we are wired to access our parasympathetic nervous system, which is located both in the lumbar as well as the cervical portions of our spinal cord. It evolved to both physically relax and mentally release. Therefore, we do not have to force those functions. Then why, you might ask, do we play with these exercises? To align our will, our volition, our intention with the mechanisms of our autonomic nervous system, which really do function as a bit of an inner therapist, if you will. This exercise is our first taste of emptiness this morning. In Buddhism, we use emptiness not literally, but figuratively. As we physically relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation, in this case our form, could feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Now, for a simile to be effective, it must be relatable. So what is a real-world example of a non-graspable, vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky, a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although could be tantalizing to the eye, is intangible to the grasp? One moment, if you please. The screen's going to go berserk for a moment. I will deal with it momentarily. Wow, that is weird. Okay, there's got to be something. Okay, that's what's going on. Okay. $36. Aha, there it is. Okay. All right. Now I get to realign the display. Okay. We continue with Vedana Sati's first of two sets of 4 jhana meditations each. This one centers on our feelings. And quick like a bunny, I'm going to again realign the display. Okay, so since we're dealing with feelings right now, we're going to, as we deal with our hands, we're going to touch the tip of our right middle finger to the great knuckle at the base of our left middle finger. We come to the first of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices, and because it is the first of 4, we'll be counting our sets upon our right little finger. We'll be savoring the first jhana's blissful joy that flows from gently grinning with the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheeks, and the crow's feet of our eyes towards our bodies of flesh, blood, and bone. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the verb grin. As we breathe out, we silently and mentally recite the object phrase to body. Having come to the second of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices, we prepare to count our sets upon our right ring finger. We shall savor the second jhana's peaceful joy, not blissful joy, but peaceful joy that flows from gently grinning towards our thoughts. Now, we're using thought here as an umbrella term. So towards our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining. During our inhalation, we silently and mentally recite the verb grin. During the exhalation, we silently and mentally recite the object phrase, to these thoughts. Coming to our third of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices, we prepare to count our 2 sets upon our right middle fingers, 2 lower sets of creases. We savor now the third jhana's contentment. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the sensory verb feel. As we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the object phrase thoughts, contents, like the contents of a box. Welcome to this morning's live stream. If at any point you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation or Buddhist philosophy or how to apply them to your life, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen. Having come to the fourth of our four feeling-oriented centering practices, we prepare to count or keep track of our two sets of 16 rounds upon our right index finger's lower two sets of creases. Let's savor the fourth jhana's neutrality by allowing our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining to tranquilly relax. As we breathe in, we could silently and mentally recite the subject umbrella term thoughts. And as we exhale, we could silently and mentally recite the three-syllable verb relaxing. We come to the final quarter of this morning's practice. By the way, if you've just, oopsie, wrong button. By the way, if you've just tuned in, welcome aboard. The moment you have any questions about Buddhist meditation or Buddhist contemplation, or how to apply them to your life, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen. Oh, excuse me. So since we're coming to the fourth set of the fourth quarter of this morning's practice, our hands are folded in our lap, but I'm going to lift them up just so you can see what's going on. What I'm going to do is touch the tip of my right index finger to the great knuckle of my left index finger. That has a wonderful effect on our subtle energy. Now, because we're on the first of four oriented, because we're on the first of four mind-oriented centering practices, we're going to keep track of our two sets of 16 on the two lower creases of our right little finger. Now, you might say, sets of 16, how do I count 16? Well, on that left hand, we would count 16 by advancing the thumb during every inhalation, thusly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Let us savor the fifth jhana sphere of infinite spaciousness, which is the opposite of physical compression. During our inhalation, let's silently and mentally recite the sensory verb watch. During our exhalation, let's silently and mentally recite the object phrase mind's contents. And we're using the word mind as an umbrella term for our ability to perceive sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like. Having come to the second of 4 mind-oriented centering practices, we prepare to keep track of our 2 sets of 16 rounds on the on the 2 sets of creases at the base of our right ring finger. Let's savor the 6th jhana's sphere of infinite awareness, which is freedom from mental compression. During our inhalation, we could silently and mentally recite the verb grin. And during the exhalation, we could silently and mentally recite the object phrase, to this mind. Remembering that mind is very subtle and refers simply to our perceptive function, or perhaps perceptual function. Having come to the third of 4 mind-oriented centering practices, we prepare to keep track of our 2 sets of 16 rounds upon our right middle fingers, lower set of creases, and second set of creases. We will savor the 7th jhana's sphere of non-graspability, or radical letting go, as in the following manner. As we breathe in, we can silently and mentally recite the umbrella term mind. And as we exhale, we can silently and mentally recite the 3-syllable verb relaxing. Remember, in this context, mind is simply an umbrella term for our capacity to see, hear, feel, taste, smell, and the like. We now conclude with the fourth of four mind-oriented centering practices. We therefore prepare to keep track of our 2 sets of 16 rounds upon the lower creases of our right index finger. We'll play with the 8th jhana sphere of acquiescent non-labeling, enjoying the balance point between shoving and reaching. As we breathe in, we can silently and mentally recite the umbrella term mind. And as we exhale, we can silently and mentally recite the verb phrase now freeing. It doesn't matter if you know how to free it or not. Just by playing with these words sets in motion a falling domino-like series of events. If you feel that I have earned it, you could type something in the chat window. You could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could share it with a friend. You could even help support this channel on Patreon. In approximately 90 minutes or so, I intend to return for today's mid-morning meditation. Until then, may you and yours be happy and healthy. And if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.